Hello world, it's Austin. Let's talk about being transgender and Christian. So today I want to talk about something that a lot of us have probably felt before, the sense of feeling like God is super far away. I got an email recently from somebody who identifies as trans and who talked about feeling far from God, like God was far away and they couldn't figure out how to feel close to God again. They said that they had been part of a church for a while, but when they came out as trans, that was no longer something that they could do, and so they're trying to figure out how to feel closer to God again and really missing that feeling. I totally get that. Basically, every person of faith and every Christian can say that they have gone through a period where they have felt like God is far, far away and they can't figure out how to get closer again. This is so common, actually, that one of my favorite authors, C.S. Lewis, has a bit where he talks about it in his book, The Screwtape Letters. Now, if you're not familiar with the Screwtape Letters, the whole idea is that they are a series of letters back and forth from a senior demon to a junior tempter. So this is C.S. Lewis basically writing from an opposite point of view, if that makes sense. Like, you kind of have to read the book and then think, okay, but how do I do the opposite of what these characters are saying? It sounds confusing, but it's actually a fascinating book, and I definitely recommend reading it. So check out this little bit of a letter here about what C.S. Lewis calls the Law of Undulation. Humans are amphibians, half spirit and half animal. As spirits, they belong to the eternal world, but as animals, they inhabit time. This means that while their spirit can be directed to an eternal object, their bodies, passions, and imaginations are in continual change, for to be in time means to change. Their nearest approach to consistency, therefore, is undulation, the repeated return to a level from which they repeatedly fall back, a series of troughs and peaks. If you had watched a man carefully, you would have seen this undulation in every department of his life. In his interest in his work, his affection for his friends, his physical appetites, all go up and down. As long as he lives on earth, periods of emotional and bodily richness and liveliness will alternate with periods of numbness and poverty. So C.S. Lewis himself was not a theologian, and so you kind of always have to take his words with a grain of salt, but I think he is spot on in that observation. It's natural to go through a period of your life in which you feel like you're kind of in a spiritual desert, but then there are also other portions of your life where you feel like you're in a spiritual oasis full of water and shade and good things. So the first thing to do when you feel far from God is to remember that this is just a trough in the peaks and troughs. This is just another bit of time that will change and things will feel better soon. The second thing to remember when God feels far away is that just because you can't feel God doesn't mean God's not there. Remember, if you were once little and in Sunday school, that your teachers probably told you that God is invisible, or you can't see God, but that doesn't mean God isn't there. It's the same way now. Just because you can't feel God doesn't mean that God's not sitting right next to you. Alright, so what do you do when you feel like God is super far away? I have 5 suggestions. First, talk to God and tell God what you're feeling. I know that sometimes talking to God feels a little bit weird. It can feel like you're trying to talk to somebody who can only communicate with head nods or head shakes and you're blindfolded. But that doesn't mean they're not there and they're not listening. There's a huge precedent in the Bible for telling God how you feel, whether you're angry or you're sad or you're happy, whatever. Tell God how you feel, tell God why you feel that way. Just talk. The second thing to do is to read Scripture to remember how God feels about you. You know, I always recommend reading the Psalms. There are 150 of these really great, some short and some long, examples of what talking to God looks like. But check this out. This is from Psalm 36. Your steadfast love, O Lord, extends to the heavens, your faithfulness to the clouds. Your righteousness is like mighty mountains, and your judgments are like the great deep. You save humans and animals alike, O Lord. How precious is your steadfast love, O God. All people may take refuge in the shadow of your wings. Reading Psalms like that reminds us about God's very nature, the God that people have experienced throughout more than 2,000 years of human history. That's the God you're talking to, so it helps to read Scripture to remember that. The third thing to do is related. Remember what God has already done for you in your life, and remember the times that you have felt closest to God. You're not remembering this to try to recreate it somehow, but you're remembering it because it is a huge part of who God is. Remembering that God stays steadfast and faithful and loving towards you, no matter whether you feel it or not, that's important. Fourth thing to do, let yourself experience silence. Whether that means like sitting and doing something with your hands like coloring or knitting or arranging dominoes, it doesn't matter. But let yourself just sort of sit and be in the quiet, because God often speaks to us in quiet times when we're not distracted by 2 million other things. So let yourself just sit in silence for a little while. One of my favorite things to do is to read a psalm or part of a psalm and then just sit quietly for like 5 minutes and think about the words and see like what words jump out at me, and if any particular words jump out at me for a reason. And the fifth thing to do, get involved with other people. It's very hard to be a Christian by yourself. That's why the people that did it professionally back in the day, and still do, like monks and hermits and nuns and people that go out into the wilderness and pray by themselves, like that takes skill. For most of us, being Christian comes with being in community, whether that community is online or in real life or however. Get involved with other people. Because here's the thing, just as God can speak directly to you in silence or through scripture or through prayer, God also speaks to us through other people. So when we surround ourselves with other people who have similar beliefs, or even different beliefs sometimes, God can speak through other folks, through their lives, through their actions, and even through their words. So that's what I'd recommend when God feels far away. Know that you are still loved, even when you are going through those trough periods, even when you are in the desert. You are still loved, God is still there, and this is going to pass, okay? It's going to be alright. So, I hope you all are doing well. I hope this video helps. If it did, and you want to see more videos like it, hit subscribe, let me know, leave me a comment, get at me on Twitter, whatever you want to do. And I will see you back here next Wednesday, everybody. Peace.